Hey y'all. So the labor numbers did come in for the month of July, so I figured we would just go ahead and jump right in. For those of you who don't keep up with the Bureau of Labor Statistics or the BEA, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, when they put out a report, generally those are the preliminary numbers. That's what they're first coming up with, and then they continue to fine tune them until they get to the actual number after they mull through the data, and go deeper and deeper. And of course, as time goes on, they get more information, right? So they continue to go back and update the information. So what we do know is that not only did we lose jobs in the month of July, but we lost jobs also from the month. Well, at least they were less than what were originally reported from May to now, right? So we do know that 23,000 jobs were lost in May. The biggest losers would be education and local government. So think about public schools, those sorts of things. Retail was a big loser. Think Walmart, Macy's, those sorts of businesses. Financial activities, think banks, investments, those sorts of things. All of those were major losers in the month of July. The only place, of course, is healthcare that saw gains. And ever since the beginning of this year, ar- around that time that the healthcare strikes were going on. Healthcare has pretty much just seen continual gains, and of course that makes sense. And I'm going to go more into that a little bit later. When we're looking at unemployment, unemployment fell to 4.1%. When we break it down by group, Black unemployment was at 6.3%. That's from 6.6% last month. White unemployment stayed at 3.6% for June and July. Hispanic unemployment fell to 4.6% from 5.2%. And Asian unemployment rose from 3.9% in June to 4% this month. Now, the shocking thing that we really have to pay attention to is it's always a positive thing to say that the unemployment rate is going down. And that could translate to many things. It could mean that people are leaving the market. It could mean that people are finding jobs, right? But what we do know, and when you look at the actual labor force number, the people actively looking for jobs, the people who are actively employed, that data point, those numbers are decreasing for every group except for Hispanic workers. That 1.1 that 4.1% unemployment rate is not as positive as it seems, because we know people are actively leaving the labor force. And that could be because they're retiring, it could be because they're sickly, they have to take care of someone, or any extenuating circumstance that's really pushing people out of the labor market. For some reason, all of the broken down groups of the labor force are really leaving, except for that Hispanic group. And that's really detrimental to us all. But I'll get deeper into that. When we look at the inflation numbers for July, inflation did rise by 0.1%. That brings us to an annual total of about 3.4% from July 2025 to July of 2026. The average hourly wage did increase to $37.62, and that's a 3.15% increase from July of last year. So inflation is still outpacing that of wages. And of course, we know that that average wage, the increase that we see, that doesn't mean that everybody got an increase. That just means that enough people got an increase that the average amount increased. If we're looking at that number without any other factors. Now, the reason why I do these reports, the reason why I keep throwing in the little asterisk and that additional little tidbit of information, is because our labor force is shrinking. The amount of people that are actually working and contributing to these numbers is going down. So, on face value, it's great to say, oh, the average amount of wage is going up, because that means wages in general is going up. But how much of that is wages in general are going up, and how much of it is people are leaving the labor force, so their income is no longer a part of the calculation at all? Unemployment's going down. How much of that is people are getting employed, people are taking jobs, and how much of it is people are leaving the labor force altogether and they're not looking for employment anymore? These things are detrimental because we are at a point where our systems are at risk. We know that in the 2030s, they're talking about Social Security being insolvent, and someone has to pay for Social Security, somebody has to pay for Medicare, somebody has to pay for Medicaid. And as we know, the boomers are retiring. That means that we have to expect an uptick in the usage and utilization of those programs. So we know that more people are going to be on Medicare. We know more people are going to use Social Security. So we have to get our ducks in a row to make sure that these things are adequately financed. And as the labor force continues to shrink, and and of course, I have my own opinions of the immigration system and the immigration progress. If we're not going to import workers to fill in that gap, because that was one answer to our finance issues, was to import the labor and build a bigger tax base based off of people wanting to come and work here. But if we're not going to do that, we have to get our ducks in a row, because at a certain point, these numbers are going to translate to more than just numbers on my notepad, more than just numbers and PDFs from the BLS and the BEA. Is going to start to translate to things that are actually tangible in a sense in our physical everyday lives. You're going to start to see what it means. And I could go for another 20 minutes about poorhouses and the history of that term and where it comes from and what America was really like before we had systems in place for the destitute, the poor, the elderly, the sickly, and those that could not do for themselves. And I could go deeper, and I could probably go for another 20 minutes to talk about the history and the connection to European culture, and specifically Elizabethan British culture, and how they treated their poor. And how it spawned and evolved into the American system. I could go deep into that, but what I can say to make it more brief is that America was a more brutal place. It was much more savage and much more terrifying. Um, greatly a terrible place to be if you were truly destitute, if you were truly down on your luck, and you were at an age where you could not do anything useful for another person. So, um, overall, I think at the current moment for July, August, we're probably stuck in the same situation. Inflation looks like it's trying to stabilize, and that's really because of international markets. China is not really demanding oil the way that it was historically in comparison to last year. China is not demanding as much oil as it did last July, this July. Though its demand for oil did increase from June to July, it's not at the point that it was last year. But I can tell you that if economic activity picks up in China, um, the oil prices will rise and our inflation rate will shoot back up, because of course that will ripple. That'll be the signal to all other markets and all other industries to raise their prices. And really, China's economic suppression or economic decline is really a saving grace for us, because it's maintaining that lower level price of oil for us. But yeah, we're still stuck. We're still wading in the water. We really need the economy to get back to a stronger period of growth, and we're really not going to see that with the ambiguities in the international markets. We're not going to see it with our political situation, and especially when it comes to our connection to international, well, not international, but to other nations. Um, we need more certainty. We need a more stable playing field so that the market can be more comfortable to better advance for us all. You would think that with our shrinking labor force, that contraction would signal to employers to raise wages, but we're not seeing a significant rise. So, of course, my argument is still going to be let's raise wages, or at least create a wage ceiling. I think that's another labor policy that I'll do, and probably in another video, that would be beneficial to us. But so far that's how work is doing for workers at the moment. So we'll have to come back and look at August numbers in September, and see what the trend is looking like, if it's still going in the same direction, or if we seem to get some sort of reprieve